Hey guys, Jerome here. Today I am doing a video on the Moto X Pure Edition 2015 versus the up-and-coming Nexus 6P. I wanted to make this video because I wanted to give a more in-depth analysis on the Moto X Pure Edition, wanted to talk about pricing between both of the phones, also an in-depth analysis of the Nexus 6P, the specs that have been released, and kind of go over whether or not spending the extra $100 on the Nexus 6P is worth it, and see just which is a better overall phone. The first thing I wanted to get out of the way though was pricing, at least one specific part of the pricing. So if price is one of the biggest factors in your purchasing decision, let's just bring it out. So the Moto X Pure Edition starts at $399 for 16 gigs of internal storage, versus the Nexus 6P, which starts at $499 but has 32 gigs of internal storage. Long story short, if you can live with 16 gigs of internal storage, I would go with the Moto X Pure Edition. If I would go with it if price is your biggest concern. If price is your biggest concern, you can get this for $399 with 16 gigs, and then you can put up to 128 gigs of expandable storage with a micro SD card in here. It has a slot for a micro SD card. So you would get all the storage you need, and you would have a great phone that's customizable, and that would be my recommendation to you if you're looking for a phone under $400 before taxes. But if 16 gigs internal storage isn't enough, and you were thinking of getting maybe a 32 gig version of this, which would be $449, then you're talking about 32 gig Moto X Pure Edition for $449 versus a 32 gig version of the Nexus 6P for $499. And then now we're talking about a $50 difference here, and that's a completely different story, and that's what I wanted to talk about today. So first things first, let's talk about the display of the phone. I have like a whole bunch of notes here because I wanted to go over pretty much line by line all the specs, what I think about them, my views on them. So display. The Moto X Pure Edition has a 5.7-inch display. The Nexus 6P also has a 5.7-inch display. They're both at 1440p resolution. The only difference between the two, well, there are two differences, but the new Nexus 6P is going to have Gorilla Glass 4 versus the Moto X's Gorilla Glass 3. But the biggest difference between both of the displays is that the Moto X Pure Edition has an IPS LCD display, and the Nexus 6P has an AMOLED display. Now, the differences between the two, from what I've gathered, the research I've been doing over the years, is that the IPS LCD display gives a more true picture, like a more realistic picture of the things that you see in, real world stuff or whatever, while the AMOLED kind of gives a more bright, vivid picture. And that's kind of subjective. That's really what your preference is between the two. I actually prefer a more realistic screen, which makes the IPS LCD really nice, but at the same time there are some disadvantages of that when you're using the Moto X Pure Edition. It's really weird to me that they went with IPS this time. The IPS LCD display is great, but because Moto X has the active notifications where it kind of breathes, or quote unquote breathes, and shows you the time and your notifications, the reason they had an AMOLED in the first place was for battery saving. So when that little screen in the middle would pop up with your notifications, it would only light up the pixels for that portion, as opposed to an IPS LCD display, which lights up the entire screen. Even though it's just black all around, it's still lighting up the pixels, and that can be a battery drainer. Now, my battery is still pretty decent. I haven't noticed anything horrible or anything on it, but if that's affecting battery, that's affecting battery. That's just a fact. So those are pretty much the two differences, though, for the displays. Whether or not you want a more realistic looking display or the AMOLED display, which is probably going to have more vivid and brighter colors. I read that Google is using the AMOLED displays that Samsung has made. They didn't say whether or not it was coming from like the S6 or the Note 5 or anything like that, but Samsung typically has really, really good displays. From my experience looking at them, and I mean, a lot of the reviews pretty much agree on that same sentiment. So performance. The Moto X Pure Edition is running on an 808 Snapdragon processor versus the Nexus 6P, which is going to be running on the 810. It's called V2.1. I don't know if that's for version 2.1. I'm assuming so. So the Nexus 6P is actually going to be running on a faster processor with also a better GPU. So the Moto X Pure Edition runs on a 418 Adreno GPU, and the Nexus 6P is running on a 430 Adreno. So as far as graphics and gaming, the nod would kind of go off to the Nexus 6P. As far as how much better the performance is, I mean, without benchmarking it, I really couldn't say, but on paper, the Nexus 6P would be the better performing phone. They both have 3 gigs of RAM, and then I kind of mentioned this earlier, but as far as internal storage, the Moto X Pure Edition starts at 16 gigs, 32 gigs, 64 gigs, and then you can put up to 128 gig micro SD card in there. As far as the Nexus 6P goes, you get 32 gigs, 64 gigs, and 128 gigs of internal storage. That's where the two differ. So the Nexus 6P has one of the largest, I think it is the largest phone right now for Android that can hold 128 gigs of internal storage. So the nod will go off then to the Nexus 6P as far as internal storage, but the Moto X theoretically can hold 128 gigs of micro SD expandable storage plus another 64 gigs of internal storage. So overall storage, you would get more storage with the Moto X Pure Edition at a cheaper price. Battery wise, so as far as battery goes, the Moto X Pure Edition has a 3000 milliamp hour battery. The battery is pretty good. It lasts me pretty much the whole day. I get, I don't know if I've been using my phone more, but I've been getting more like 3 hours and 15 minutes to 3 hours and 45 minutes of on-screen time. Typically, I'd like to see 4 hours of on-screen time, but that's what I'm getting. I don't know if that attributes to me using the T-Mobile network. I don't know if that attributes to the actual display with the active notifications and the IPS LCD display over the AMOLED. But battery is still really good for me. I just wish that, towards the end of my day, I still had more juice to just use the phone when I'm on the couch or whatever. Now, the Nexus 6P has a 3,450 milliamp hour battery, which is significantly bigger than the Moto X Pure Edition. So I'm pretty sure that the Nexus 6P would outlast the Moto X Pure Edition for battery, purely based on the specs on paper. Now, both of the phones have fast charging. The Moto X Pure Edition has Quick Charge 2.0. In a previous test, I've gone from 0% to 100% in an hour and like 19 minutes. So for under an hour and 20 minutes, you'll get a full charge from 0% to 100%, hour and 20 minutes. The Nexus 6P, there was actually a Reddit not too long ago where they were talking about where Google was responding to a lot of people's questions, and they do say it has fast charging. The specifics there, though, say it goes from 1% to 100% in an hour and 37 minutes. So the Moto X Pure Edition would charge a lot not a lot faster, would charge probably around 20 to 30 minutes faster than a Nexus 6P, but that's still a pretty good charge for the 6P, and considering the fact that the Nexus 6P would have a bigger battery, it would also last longer. So I would assume that with a 6P, you would probably go through a whole day without even really worrying about having to quick charge it. But again, this is the stuff on paper. I don't have the phone with me, so this is all I can go off of. Okay, so camera. Let's talk about the camera. The Moto X Pure Edition is a 21 megapixel camera with a f2 aperture. The Nexus 6P also has the same aperture. The pixel size, and this is what the Nexus 6P, well, also the 5X made a big deal about, but the pixel size on the Moto X Pure Edition is 1.1 micron pixels. And well, I guess just to kind of summarize, the bigger the micron pixels, the better the low light pictures you would get. So again, the Moto X Pure Edition is showing 1.1 micron pixels, while the Nexus 6P is showing 1.55 micron pixels, which is, I think I was checking specs on like the iPhone 6s and the Note 5 and S6, and the Nexus 6P actually has more, like a bigger pixel size than either of those phones, which I'm hoping would give really, really good low light pictures. You know, I know that's a big eyesore for a lot of people, and I'm thinking Google did this time to accommodate a lot of those people who are looking for a better camera. Now, the Moto X Pure Edition, it has no laser autofocus. The Nexus does, and that laser autofocus will help pretty much focus pictures better. There is slow motion video on the Moto X Pure Edition, and it does it at 120 frames per second, but I read that the Nexus 6P does it at 240 frames per second, so you would get better slow motion video off of the Nexus 6P. Both phones have front-facing speakers, and then as far as, again, pricing, so the Moto X Pure Edition starts at $399 with 16 gigs, $449 for 32 gigs, and $499 for 64 gigs of internal storage. Pricing for the Nexus 6P starts at $499 for 32 gigs, $549 for 64 gigs, and then $649 for 128 gigs. So there's a big price difference between the two, and again, for people who are debating on price and features, hopefully this video is helping you guys out. As far as build quality goes, on the Moto X Pure Edition, you know, you get a very customizable phone. Again, you can change the front to white or black. These stereo speakers that are here have like a small trim to them, and you can change those colors. I think maybe 7 or 8 different colors. The back has 18 different like rubber silicone colors, and you can get them also in leather or wood in a bunch of different options. This trim also can be changed with colors, and it'll match whatever your front facing speakers are. And then on the Nexus 6P, you get 3 options. It's an all aluminum phone, like a full metal phone, and it comes in like a black color, a silver color, or a white color. And they have fancy names for it, but really it's black, white, and silver. So you don't really have a lot of customization there, but you know, you still have an option between those 3 colors. Okay, so so as far as build quality goes, you know, the Moto X Pure Edition, I really like the build quality. I think it's really nice. You know, having the metal frame around here, because, you know, it's not an all metal phone, obviously. It just has a metal frame around, which can also be customized. You can get them in, you know, the silver color, or you can get it in a champagne, like gold color. And, you know, it has like a plasticky back and all that kind of stuff, but it's still a really solid phone, feels good in hand, and as far as the Nexus 6P goes, that looks like a really premium phone though too, because it's all metal. I didn't check the weight on that one. I'm not sure if it's heavier. I'm assuming it might be heavier. The only like thing I'm questioning on that phone is how slippery it is going to be on the back. You know, I don't use cases on my phones. I don't like cases, so hopefully it's not something that I'm going to have to worry about holding in my hand and dropping it. Hopefully not. I'm crossing my fingers on that one. Okay, so features between the two. And when I say features, I mean separate features. So the Moto X Pure Edition has active notifications, like again, it has IR sensors up on the front here, so that when you wave your hand over it, it'll show you your notifications. It'll show you the time. Have little icons at the bottom for notifications, so you can see who texted you, if you had a Facebook update, if somebody liked a picture on your Instagram, so on and so forth. And you can actually customize like what apps show up here and what kind of information should show and all that kind of stuff for privacy reasons. The phone also has touchless like voice control, like hands-free voice control, and it has gestures. That's right. It has gestures to turn on the flashlight. It has gestures to turn on the camera, so you don't need to unlock your phone. You can just use hand gestures to enable those features. Wow, it looks like I'm going to learn how to edit today because my camera actually cut out. So I was talking about features, and this is just the continued version. As far as Nexus 6P features go, the things that stand out from it, as opposed to the Moto X Pure Edition, is the fact that it has a USB Type-C connector, so you can plug that in. It's a reversible USB Type-C connector. It can go in either way, as opposed to Moto X's USB or micro USB connector. The other thing about it, and a big thing that a lot of people are talking about, is the fingerprint scanner, fingerprint reader. I've heard really good things. I've heard that Huawei actually makes a really good one, and hopefully this one's even better than the other ones they've made before. That can unlock the phone without having you to put a PIN code, or I've heard you can also use it to pay for purchases. I didn't really read much into that, but those are the two big things that are coming with it, and the fact that it's not really a feature, but because it's a Nexus, the updates will come on that phone faster than any other phone. That's pretty much what I want to talk about. I think I went through everything. For conclusion-wise, okay, you got to think about it like this. If you're gonna get a 16, if you're okay with the 16 gig phone at $399, the Moto X Pure Edition is the way to go. If price is the biggest factor for you, it's the way to go. Now, things get a little iffy when you're talking about a 32 gig phone or a 64 gig phone. When you're talking about a 32 gig or a 64 gig, the price difference is only $50 between the Moto X Pure Edition and the Nexus 6P. So a 32 gig Moto X Pure Edition would be $449, and a 32 gig Nexus 6P would be $499. And then also for the 64 gig version, you are talking about $499 versus $549. So the question, I guess, really is, does a fingerprint scanner, a better processor, a better battery, possibly a better display, a better camera, having Android updates first, are those worth the extra $50? Now remember, when you have the Moto X Pure Edition, you're also going to lose a lot of those features that Motorola bakes into their software and even in their hardware, with the IR sensors for kind of hands-free use. So you kind of got to weigh the two. Is the $50 extra worth it? And if you want to, is losing a micro SD slot also worth it? Because the Moto X has a micro SD slot for expandable storage. So you kind of got to weigh the two, see what works best for you. I don't know if a lot of people are really going to notice performance-wise as far as the processor and the GPU, but I'm sure in low light instances you probably will notice a better camera, and for sure you'll probably notice a better battery. And those might be deciding factors when you're looking at the 32 gig version and the 64 gig version, when you consider there's only a $50 price difference. At the end of the day, it's your money, it's what you want to do with it. This is just information that I'm trying to share with you guys, trying to help you guys out. It's helpful for me too, because I love doing this, and a lot of people always ask me which one they should get. I have a lot of friends who are always wondering what their next phone should be, and I always love going through that. So hopefully this has been helpful for you guys. If you end up getting one or the other, let me know. Let me know what you like about it, and that's it. Alright guys, till the next one. See you later.